Hello everyone and welcome back to A Little Bit of Genius, a podcast series run by North Anglia Education students. My name is Zosia and I am a Year 13 student at the British School of Warsaw.
And my name is Sonia and I'm also in Year 13. For today's episode, we are hosting two very special guests, opera singers Camille Zamora and Monica Yunus. Both ladies are based in New York City, where they founded Sing for Hope, a nonprofit organization that seeks to give back to their community. Welcome, Camille and Monica.
Thank you so much for having us. Great to be with you.
Thank you. So to start off, I would like to ask you how you started your music careers. Did you have a passion for singing since you were young?
So yes, I was officially that kid who just would never be quiet. And I was rather crazy. I sang every possible song, actual and invented. And I did not have an awareness even of what opera was, but I knew that I just loved expression through music. I was lucky enough to go to great public schools in Texas, where I'm from, and had great music teachers. And what I just found was year after year, my voice kept getting bigger and louder and higher. And I had a wonderful teacher who said, you should think about opera, give that a try. And I was obviously fascinated because it was this different kind of way of using the voice. It was this athletic, very, full body way of producing sound that's about filling a 2,500 seat theater with no microphone. And,
Right.
It seemed kind of like the final frontier, sort of the Olympics of the voice. And I was fascinated. And so I left my wonderful high school, which was High School for the Performing and Visual Arts in Houston, and was lucky enough to go to Juilliard in New York City, where I met Monica.
Yes.
I have a similar story. I was definitely also that kid who would not stop singing. I sang to the birds in my driveway. I would sing any chance I could get. I would sing along to the radio. And my mom was like, okay, we have to do something with her. So lucky for me, I grew up in Jackson, New Jersey, and very close by was an opera singer who took me on as a student very young. I was 11 when I started taking voice lessons. I grew up half Russian, half Bangladeshi, and so grew up speaking Russian in my household. And this voice teacher was Russian, Kira Baklanova, huge influence in my life. And Kira would very lovingly give me these voice lessons as an 11-year-old, very precocious, aspiring opera singer, and had no idea really what that meant. In addition to that, my mom had me audition for the Metropolitan Opera Children's Chorus, because as some of you may know, there are a lot of operas that have kids, like La Boheme or many others. Werther, that was one of my first operas actually, and joined that children's chorus and was very happily introduced to the world of opera at the Metropolitan Opera. So I was super, super lucky to get that kind of bird's eye on stage view as an 11-year-old. And then tragically, I grew too tall at my full 5'2" frame. Exited from the children's chorus because I was too tall, which still makes me laugh to this day. And only to return many, many, many years later as a Metropolitan Opera debut in 2008. But many, many things in between. But yes, to answer your original question, I always wanted to sing.
Okay, great. So you two met at Juilliard. Was it an automatic friendship, partnership? How did you come to work together?
I have a great story about this. Camille forgets this, but I don't. At the time in New York, there was a very funny little restaurant called Dallas Barbecue that the students would frequent often because it was cheap and they could afford to go there. And one such evening with a bunch of friends from Juilliard, one of my friends said, there's a new student coming to start her master's degree, and her name is Camille. After we ate dinner, we walked around the corner, and this same friend said, look, that's Camille. And there Camille was on a billboard in front of Jennifer's Convertibles, laid out on a couch as a model. And I was like,
wow.
She's so beautiful. She's so fancy. Wow, maybe we'll be friends. But that's exactly the first time I heard about the Camille Zamora. That is hilarious. Well, Monica and I were forged in the flames together because we both had the joy of studying, the joy and the terror of working with an amazing sort of iconic voice teacher at Juilliard, Miss Beverly Johnson.
But she was an amazing human being who had really taught the greats of the greats. She had, and she actually came from a background of piano, obviously from a voice scholarship, but she was a pianist and also had a great kind of therapeutic background. So she even helped wonderful singers, august singers like Pavarotti and Vivaldi, when they were in vocal trouble, and helped them get back on the path. But she even helped LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson, the U.S. president who succeeded Kennedy, when he had gone through a period of vocal hoarseness and had to have vocal cord surgery. And she used to tell us stories of flying on Air Force One to the White House to help him do vocal cord therapy. So she was a fascinating character, one of the toughest human beings. And she taught us incredible lessons I will never forget. I was in a lesson with her and I dropped my glass of water, I think probably out of nervousness. And I broke this little glass. And of course, I was petrified and I was like, I'm so sorry. I apologized over and over again. She said, Camille, you just reminded me of something I need to teach you, which is you apologize too much. Here's how you do it. You say, I'm sorry once. How can I make it right? And then you move on. And you need to do that in everything in your life. Don't walk into a room and apologize for your existence. Just be who you are. If there's a mistake, apologize once and fix it. Yeah, that was a wonderful life lesson. And I think she did have that gift of teaching voice and teaching life at the same time. And so all of that said, Monica and I think meeting in the context of that vocal studio also, I think, cast us in a certain light, and I cast our wonderful friendship in a certain light. And who knows? I think the universe also had plans. We kept finding ourselves wonderfully in similar places, not just Juilliard, but in a series of summer festivals and then wonderful operas that we were cast in together. And we just always, there was never any sense of hiatus in our friendship. We always just picked up where we left off. And I think, one of the things that really resonated with both of us, aside from, I think, having a similar vocal aesthetic, which is actually important, I think we both resonated with the same kind of singing, which was cool. Aside from that, we both had an interest in using the arts as a delivery system for hope and for joy and justice and renewal in ways that are, I think, unexpected. And that was something that we've been pioneering together now for 20 years, which is crazy to think it's that long. Oddly, we're still only in our early 20s, so I don't know how that happens.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, how does an opera singer day look? Like, is there any rigorous training, or is there some sort of important things that you have to do on a daily basis?
Yes, I think that's a great question. And as Camille referenced before, opera singers are like the Olympics for the voice, right? It's not just about singing one song well, one aria well. We refer to songs within an opera as arias. Mm-hmm. And, if an opera tends to be a long evening, right? So you have operas that last 2 hours, you have operas that last up to 5 hours with certain Hungarian pieces. So you definitely have to train in a way that is very much like a marathon, right? And you're portraying a character. So there's acting, there's costumes, there's watching the conductor, there's, being a good colleague, there's quick changes backstage, right? Because the music is going, and whether you make a cue happen and you pick up that cue and you go on, or you don't, it keeps going. And that's a wonderful sort of metaphor for life, right? No matter what's going on, it just time marches on. And within the context of music, that's especially the case.
So you said you do performances. Do you also do opera recordings?
That's a fun and interesting part of the whole ecosystem. The musical ecosystem is, of course, the recording industry, which has changed enormously. And, I would also say, goodness, everything has changed so much since the beginning of 2020. Both Monica and I have been fortunate enough to be featured on, obviously many broadcasts. Monica's on some really beautiful broadcasts from the Metropolitan Opera, La Rondine. You can see her featured in that, and that was a very successful commercial recording for the Metropolitan Opera. So sometimes that's the case. I did a wonderful, fascinating opera called The Long Christmas Dinner. That was with the American Symphony Orchestra, recorded live at Lincoln Center. And that was also a really sort of heralded recording, a really interesting opera recording. So sometimes the opera recording industry takes the form of basically just capturing a live performance. but then also, in fact, just this year, I also released an album that was quite meaningful to me because it's music of my heritage, Hispanic heritage, and it's called If the Night Grows Dark, Si la noche se hace oscura, and it is 4 centuries of Spanish song, arranged by a wonderful guitarist, Graciano Tarragó, who was the guitar teacher for much of the 20th century. Monica was an associate producer of that album, and so it's obviously creating albums, and recordings. It's a wonderful way to share what we do. I will admit I'm always partial to the live experience, especially. I was saying to Monica this morning, I find myself right now palpably yearning for live in-person music experiences. I know that we're all feeling like this, but this is just a moment that we have to get through, and we will get through it. And in the meantime, I would say that we as artists, and I definitely mean this for the young, amazing artists who are listening to this conversation, at Nord Anglia, you all have such creative resources. The world needs this right now. I mean, can you imagine quarantine without
nothing? Yeah.
Without your favorite Netflix, without your favorite song, without and your own creative expression. I think that is what gets us through the dark night, and so I think we're just trying to drill down on that right now and take strength from it, and goodness, we are going to celebrate when we're together again.
Do you often get stage fright? And if yes, do you have any advice to overcome it?
If I'm not a little bit nervous before I go out on stage, something's wrong. So I think nerves are part of it, definitely. And that applies to public speaking. That applies to giving a presentation in front of your classmates. I think that nerves are a good thing. It makes you feel like you're alive. And so, my advice is always to try to breathe through it. And singers have certain tools, particularly to make sure their mouths don't get dry. Like they will eat a banana before a performance because that can it has natural beta blockers, so it keeps nerves at bay. Some people like to bite into an apple because for singers, it allows that mouth dryness to go away. I know for me, as a student at Juilliard, some of the most nerve-wracking times was singing for my classmates. And so as Nord Anglia students, I imagine you do a lot of presentations and things like that for classes.
Of course.
It's always nerve-wracking. Just breathe through it.
That's wonderful. I love that, Monica. Building on that, I would say what never has worked for me is the command, don't be nervous. Makes me more nervous. And in fact, I think sports psychologists would say that any sort of negative command like that, don't, the brain then hears, be nervous. Don't trip as you go on stage, and the brain
You'll trip.
Yeah. As you go on stage. So, I think first of all, training yourself to give positive commands. So, instead of don't be nervous, embrace the energy of those nerves, channel the energy, that kind of a positive command is helpful. I also am just a huge believer in muscle memory. How I want it to go needs to be so strong that just becomes the default setting when I go on stage. And I do think a lot of the great artists are the ones who grapple the most with this because the stakes are high. I think for somebody who's like, yeah, whatever, I'll perform or I won't, and who cares who listens, and if it's good, it's good, if it's not, it's not. That somehow doesn't have the intensity and the urgency that a lot of the great art has. And I think there's something about, having to really dig deep in yourself to deliver this, what is ultimately a product of your soul. When you're doing it, you're going out, it's a very odd thing to do as a performing artist, especially. You're going out in front of a bunch of strangers and saying, this is my soul's response to love. This is my soul's response to loss. This is my response to healing. These are these cultural modes that we're sharing in a very vulnerable way. And I think that's the power of it. That's why it's so special. That's why, after millennia, we're still sharing art together because it has enormous spiritual power in that way.
You're listening to A Little Bit of Genius. Our students are speaking with opera singers Monica Yunus and Camille Zamora, who started the music-based charity Sing for Hope. If you're enjoying this episode and want more interviews with changemakers, record breakers and experts, make sure you discover the whole of Series 2.
So next question, which has always been a curiosity of mine. I know that opera singers, they sometimes have to perform in different foreign languages. Do you have to know this language to perform in it? Do you have to learn it?
I will say that it helps to learn the languages. I mean, there are a lot of people who don't necessarily have a fluency level in the 5 or 6 languages that most opera singers will sing in. For example, most opera singers I know sing in German, Italian, French, English, and sometimes some Russian, sometimes some Czech. So fluency, and as a part of a 4-year program at Juilliard, for example, in undergrad, you will take not only a sort of a sampling of the actual language, basic grammar language course in 4 different languages, but in addition to that, you'll take diction in each one of those languages. I grew up speaking Russian in my household, as I said before, and I've studied Italian in Italy, and have a certain level of fluency in Italian, French, and German, because I've studied in all of those countries for months at a time. And I think that that's probably the case in 90% of opera singers. So, to your question, yes.
Yeah. Amazing. So can you tell us a bit about Sing for Hope? Do you plan to expand it in the future? Do you have any plans for it?
I was just going to say, I think we should give a little overview of what Sing for Hope is. And,
I'm sure our listeners would like to know more.
Yeah, Camille and I have always described Sing for Hope as kind of an artist Peace Corps. We have artists who volunteer their time to schools, hospitals, and community centers. And even as I say that, I'm so used to saying that because that's what we have been for 15 years. But truth be told, during COVID, when 95% of all arts organizations are canceling their seasons and having such a difficult time, this is a time that we've made a decision to pay our artists, which is significant for us, to make the decision to pay them for the incredible work that they do to serve communities. In the previous 15 years, as I said, we volunteered, and that was everything from creating these beautiful Sing for Hope pianos to performing bedside for patients in hospitals. So when you see a Sing for Hope piano in the middle of Times Square or in a refugee camp, it is to surprise, delight, and connect, and to show people that whether or not you see yourself as an artist, that creativity lives in each one of us. And it's up to us to dig into that and to figure out a way to highlight that talent. And I'm not talking about being a singer on stage. I'm talking about the creativity that all humans possess and show in different ways.
Yeah, of course. Speaking of the awful pandemic, how has COVID affected your career and your ability to sing in a partnership?
What a great question.
I think Monica alluded to it. We're looking at a situation right now where 95% of arts presenters in the performing arts field have been forced to either suspend or greatly abbreviate their seasons. And so, of course, what that means is not just the people on stage, but the folks in the orchestra pit, the people behind the scenes. The impact is profound. And I think, arts are a driver of, aside from well-being, they're a driver of economic well-being. Really, we are going to have to figure out new ways to deliver the arts. This is something Sing for Hope is really looking at. But aside from that, we know that we have to figure out how to get these theaters open again. We have to find ways to be hopeful, to generate creativity, to generate innovation. And, listen, it is true. Historically, we all know the greatest innovation comes from times of need. So there will be beautiful solutions. There are beautiful solutions that are being born of this moment.
As professionals, do you have any advice for aspiring opera singers? What does it take to become an opera singer?
That old quote, what does it take to get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice.
Yeah.
So I think with anything, it applies to life in general, that you have to be sort of motivated to get through the dark doubts that one has with whatever it is that you're pursuing. And really having an understanding of what it is you're going into and the lifestyle. I think that's something that's not necessarily portrayed particularly well in conservatory training, like what it will be from a day-to-day basis, what it will be for just a family living and, that kind of thing. If you don't like to travel, being an opera singer is probably not something that you want to do. You travel all the time when possible, not during this time.
Of course.
COVID. So I think whatever it is that you choose to pursue, you just need to know that it will have sometimes a winding path, and to be resilient in the face of the twists and turns that may come along with it, and the disappointments of not getting something. I think it's very easy to look at somebody extremely successful and think that it was, that it happened overnight and that it was easy, and more than likely it was not.
Takes determination and a lot of time.
A lot of determination, a lot of time, a lot of reflection on how one overcomes something, the difficulties in that path.
So there are a lot of styles in opera. Which are your favorite to sing, and do you sing them in the shower?
The secondary purpose of a shower is, to be clean. The primary purpose of a shower is
to sing, of course.
so funny. As we think about empowering, our rallying cry at Sing for Hope is always art for all, because we really do believe that everyone is an artist, that a well-lived life means that you're creating and you're making beauty, and you're making, fun, expressive stuff in whatever form that inspires you, whether it is sound or whether it's, embroidery or cooking or whatever the case, welding, whatever the case may be. All of that said, I do think, there's nothing more fun than singing in the shower, because you have all that fabulous humidity and you have those echoing hard surfaces.
Sure.
And someday with Sing for Hope, obviously we put the pianos on the streets because it encourages people to stop and make music. It's a lot to get busy people to stop and connect, the stockbroker with the pizza delivery guy with the nanny. It's hard to get them to all connect around anything, let alone music. But people do that with Sing for Hope pianos. Someday we'll figure out a way to do little street side pop-up showers where people can
Yeah.
So that'll be our next project.
So speaking about singing, is it possible to train anyone to be an opera singer? Like, even if they're saying, oh, I'm terrible at singing, I can't sing. Is it possible to train them? Or do they have to have that will or some talent, hidden talent?
I think everyone can sing. Whether or not you would put them on a stage without mics to sing to an audience, that's a different story. I, for example, would never be a marathon runner ever in my life. No matter how much training I can, maybe run a mile on a good day, but it's just not something that I have the will to pursue. And I think the same with singing or any other sort of artistic pursuit. You have to come to a bit of determination to achieve a certain level. That's a different thing than what we believe at Sing for Hope, which is, again, what Camille was just saying, that everyone is an artist. I do firmly believe that. You have some creativity and some level of self-expression, but it's like a habit. You have to keep in that habit of drawing that out.
So there's no practical reason to do anything in life. It's about passion. It's about what motivates you. And I think if you have that wild love to express yourself through music, you will find a way. And if you're analytical and have good advisors, which, that's another thing Monica and I talk a lot about, you always want to have your sort of spiritual board of advisors at your back. You want to pull together people in your life who can give you good advice along your path. But that said, if your true passion, if you wake up thinking about music and sound and how to make it and how to share it, you'll absolutely find a way to do that in your life.
Thank you so much, Camille and Monica, for your time and for joining us on this episode.
Oh, we loved it. Thank you for having us.
And thank you to everyone for listening to A Little Bit of Genius. We hope you've enjoyed it. To find out more about Camille and Monica's charity, visit singforhope.org. And ladies, is there anywhere else where our listeners can go to learn about you and your charity?
At Sing for Hope on Instagram. And we'd love to connect there.
Be sure to follow us on podcast streaming platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or SoundCloud, to catch new episodes.
Bye-bye.